to the Death and All the Rest podcast, where we talk about life, death, and everything in between. Hey, Chris.
Hey, Brie. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm well.
Good. I'm glad. Been thinking, topic, let's jump in. This came up from a place of there's a pretty viral series right now that's on Netflix that's streaming called Adolescence, and this is where it's really been popping in my head, has become a big concept that I have brought to you. We have discussed a couple of times off camera, and we just want to bring to this conversation because it feels really important to talk about. So, without spoilers, I'm just getting basically the point of the show Adolescence, and what we're going to speak to is it speaks to the influence of one, just social media in general on people, but especially adolescents and younger people whose brains are developing and being shaped by everything that they are consuming. And then more specifically, it gets into the effect of what is referred to as the manosphere on the internet. And the manosphere, I'll just read the Google AI real quick, refers to a collection of online communities that promote anti-feminist, traditional ideas about masculinity. And these communities are often characterized by misogyny and in some cases the promotion of harmful and violent narratives. So that in itself is dangerous. And there's a big impact that we're seeing on what that's doing to developing brains and what that's doing to normalize certain mindsets and behaviors and the way that we're engaging with people. And again, like I said, specifically that impact on young minds that are really, really just in the early phases of developing and are easily conditioned and brainwashed in a lot of these cases. So I'm going to throw that out first is just like the introduction of what we're chatting about. And then Chris, we talked a bit about this, but like from your point of view in this stuff and talking about whether it's the manosphere or social media impact, but like, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think let's give some examples first. I think that's important. Sure. The manosphere. Yeah. It could be one of the most prevalent is a guy named Andrew Tate, who's a kickboxer. He's got a pretty ugly record of human trafficking and rape and running away from different countries to stay ahead of the law. But he also has a very large online following, and he kind of sells like a program for to younger males who are looking for, well, I don't know what they're looking for, but maybe some sort of guidance on how to be a man. There's him. There's Jordan Peterson, who is a psychologist from Canada. He's been around for quite some time, in fact, and he came up with some basic principles for like how to be fulfilled and success. And then he's grown into this much bigger thing that now he's become one of these online manosphere gurus, which is and I know there's a lot more out there. And it could even go to like all the Navy SEALs, the ex-Special Forces guys in America, who are selling all kinds of different products and pushing a certain kind of vision of the world, or certainly selling online. Excuse me. Hiccups. And the ugliness of what we're seeing is this is a form of not just grievance against women, but domination. And it's wrapped up in a conservative rainbow of traditional values, the values that are sold as like this is what makes life worth living. And these are the proper roles of our biology. And none of that is true in and of itself. There are traditional values. There is conservative values. There is a past. What there also is a bill of sale. This is something that's being sold to young men, and as a form of enrichment, and it has become a very viral thing in the sense that like people know what the model is now. And you can recreate that model, center it around yourself, make a shitload of money, potentially, and feel like very powerful yourself as some kind of guide or guru to young men. So my initial question is, from just looking at it from that, is what are these guys satisfying in themselves? The people that do this, what level of what are they actually bringing to the table that's beneficial or of value, versus what are they doing to satisfy their own psyche? And I would think that that is insecurity themselves. And so by their assuaging their insecurity, by promoting this behavior and selling it to others, to young impressionable men. My personal belief is that the real man doesn't have to sell that. The real man doesn't have to push that.
It reminds me of that saying, like, if you have to refer to yourself as an alpha male, you're not an alpha male.
Absolutely.
Right? Like that kind of, like, if you have to advertise it about yourself, it's probably just not true.
There is an entire code of language and symbols behind this. And it is used to like signify and to share and to spread and propagate this. If one is the whole alpha versus beta versus sigma, and that's all basis. Some guy, I forget his name, who came up with this basis wolf packs back in the 60s or 70s, and he turned out to be wrong, and he was the first one who found out that he was wrong, and he said, yo, I got it wrong, this doesn't happen this way. But it like took on a life of its own because it gives a very satisfying narrative of power and freedom from restriction, of self-discipline and ethics, and it was very subtle.
And it creates this mentality, right? Because like no one wants to call themselves or think of themselves as a beta, right? Like it's striking at something very core and very visceral in humans and in men, you know, male humans specifically. Like nobody wants to be that. So then it creates this almost like competition where you're vying to all be alphas.
Yes, absolutely. And then if you don't have the trappings of success, you are not a man. And those trappings would be the trophy girl who's adoring and following you, the cars, the money, the acquisitions, all this capitalist physical externalities of control and power and conquest and all this stuff.
Yep.
And it's just horse shit. Sorry, dudes. It's absolute horseshit. You will not find ultimate satisfaction by acquiring things and beating other people. And you will eventually feel hollower and hollower because it will not satisfy the emptiness inside. That comes from integrity. and comes from being a strong person, and that doesn't mean being powerful. It means knowing yourself, knowing what you're doing, having a purpose, bringing true value to the world, and it also involves. I used this word a little while ago. I'll use it again. An inhibitory impulse. There is an element of being a father and being a man, just like there's an element of being a mother and a woman, is sacrifice. We have duty towards one another, and fulfilling those roles and standing up in that position is actually where you will find much more value and connection and confidence, the kind that is truly satisfying, the kind that lasts throughout one's life. And I think that's just me addressing the whole big picture thing, but there's a lot more to this story.
Yeah. And I think even with that, even with what you're saying, there's also like in that, there's this like stepping outside of these standard stereotypical gender roles that we have created, because in every relationship, those roles are not necessarily what works. Like being able to allow for the unique differences and the ebb and flow of two different people coming together. You know, relationships are not even just heteronormative. and
Yeah.
there are trans identities to take into account here. But like even in my relationship, which is a heteronormative relationship, there are things that my husband does that are traditionally feminine roles, and there are things that I do that are traditionally masculine roles, but it works for us. If you put yourselves into these tight little containers of like, this is how, a woman should act and this is how a man should act, you're also putting yourself in this place where like you're not allowing for any kind of natural flow and natural rhythm to play out. And then like that's restrictive.
Yes.
And for what? For like, because someone's telling you that that's the way to do this? That's bullshit. Like, I think throughout this episode, let's just say bullshit, bullshit, bullshit. Because like this stuff needs to be said in no uncertain terms. Like, do not fall into the conditioning that's happening online with some of this stuff. And it's totally fine. If you are I am not bashing the people who live within traditional gender roles and that works for their relationship. There's nothing wrong with that. If that is what works for you and that is what you and your partner have decided you prefer and feels good, beautiful, great. We want everyone to make that decision for themselves and not just fall into something because it's what the narrative is saying. But you said something that I think is really important and I wanted to hit on too. You said, this manosphere stuff is coming from a place of insecurity. And there's this with insecurity, there's two things that we can, there's always more than two things. There's two obvious things that we can do. We can step into that and understand it and try to do our own personal work around that insecurity to alleviate some of that, or we can avoid it and try to step away from that and create all of these walls that we build around other people for our insecurities.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's what the manosphere has done. It's become this, instead of looking inward and saying, wow, these are things that I really, I don't feel good about in the way that people respond to when I do this, or how I try to engage in relationships, or the way I try to present myself as a human being or a man in this world. I'm not liking the reception that I'm getting to that. So instead of figuring out how to do this in a way that promotes personal growth, they do this in a way that villainizes the people who don't respond well to that. And then they make themselves predators. They do this weird tilt, right? Because they were seeing themselves as a victim.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, my poor victim self. People don't like me. I'm not received well. So then they flip the script, and then they are now the predators, creating an entire small world. Not that small, it's all over the place, but like this community where people are preying on the people who are not receiving them, rather than either just accepting that that's just how it is and not everybody is going to respond to you the same way, or learning how to do something for yourself to get different results. And that's what's happening here. It's like this manipulation of the scenario to not do anything and not reflect and have any kind of insight and awareness about yourself and your role in this world, and to just make everybody else the villain that you are. Because a big part of this manosphere stuff, that description on Google AI that I read, talks about like violence and dominance and stuff. And it is about, there's this very real aspect of this where there's this entitlement, this like male entitlement to women. Women owe you something and you deserve them. If you do certain things, you deserve the outcome of getting that woman. And then if you don't, what happens? And they're not saying that part, right? But like they do talk about some specifics around like the vote. Yeah. They do talk about the specifics around like how to prey on vulnerability, right? Like when a woman is in a vulnerable place, this is the time to strike, which is counterintuitive to most of us, to people with like actual good grounded hearts. We don't want to prey on somebody who's vulnerable and use that as our moment of entry, our moment to get them. We want to support, but this is the opposite.
I mean, for true in the sense that that's one of the more unfortunate aspects of humanity. Is the predators are out there and people learn to prey, taught to prey. And maybe, this insecurity comes from a very real, a very real place. And like, if you're a young person, you look at the world and you're like, the generations before me have preyed upon me. And maybe you're
Mhm.
being preyed upon. You're being preyed upon right now. Look at the bill of sale we hand people now. Is you're fucked. It's too late. Everything's been done. You don't get to explore anything or do anything new. It's all jaded and corrupted, and the bad guys are winning. And the only answer is to be a shark, and just get as much power as you can, get yours. And that has not changed, and it just looks even worse now, I think, because it seems very real in that we're in a very existentially dangerous time.
Yeah.
So, like, you can feel this in your body. And when you see these guys say, you want to stop feeling that way, do this. Feel powerful, be predator, that kind of shit.
Well, and that's a great point, because it's not just preying on the women or the people that they're talking about that they feel entitled to. It's preying on the people like that, the people who resonate with the insecurity or the not fitting in, right? And then it's like, here's what you can do. Change that. You're going to feel good. You're going to feel powerful. Who's not going to be drawn to that if you feel so othered already?
If everybody's a predator, everybody's prey. Everything that
Mm-hmm.
men do to women, men do to other men.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That
For
kind of
sure.
psychopathology or sociopathy is it preys on everything, right? You don't want to do this. Down this path leads to degeneracy. That's where it ends up. You get smaller and more twisted and weaker and more ugly and essentially more pathetic. That is not what, and I come from a very conservative background, but that's not what I consider a man. There is,
Yeah.
if you want to look at traditional male values and look at it like that, that ain't it, motherfucker.
Because that's creating a very every man for themselves mentality. And like, that's not typically what we're doing, especially in family systems and in village systems, and if you go further back before colonization stuff. But like, people looked out for each other, and it's about like what's best for the collective. And I think this has been a switch culturally too that we've seen. There has been some more mentality around what's best for me, the individual, versus the collective. And that's been a growing divide in what we're seeing in our society. But like, that's not the way that as humans we're really innately programmed to function. We are not innately programmed to function in a way that we're only thinking about ourselves and what's best for us, because that's not what keeps the population alive and growing and thriving.
No, it's collectivism. It is strong groups and culture. And what we're seeing I think, is a lot of cultural stagnation and exhaustion. We're just fucking whooped. At least
Yeah.
we feel that way, or we see that way. We're just like, we're over being human. We don't see a positive future. There's very few things to have put our faith in. I don't give a fuck what political side of the spectrum you're on. You look at most of these people, and in your body, inherently, like, these aren't our best. These are most often our worst, our least competent, our most corrupt, and it's obvious. And you feel this, and you're just exhausted, and you're just, I'm gonna, fuck everybody else. I'm gonna do for me, and that just is not the answer. It will not get us out of this. It's just going to be more divisive. Um, and that's not the kind of person that I want to be. And that's not the kind of person I respect either, or I want to have around me. I want a lot of people that are loving and respectful and strong, and who come together around a challenge and don't just fucking beat on each other. It's fucking pathetic.
It's not the healthiest way to raise this upcoming and this next generation of adults that we're going to have, this iteration that's coming, that's being influenced in this way. And not that every Gen Alpha kid is falling into this trap, they're certainly not, but the ones who are, there's already there's a divide starting this early. We're talking adolescents and even younger than that, we're kids who are 8 years old, who are on social media already, or the internet in some ways. There's already this exposure, and nobody's considering, well, that's not true. Maybe they are considering, and maybe this is the hope for the outcome. But considering the outcome of this long term of what kind of adults this brings into the world, and with adults who are centered on feeling entitled and being predatory, what kind of culture that's going to create, right? That's a potential really terrifying outcome.
There's no fun in that world.
There's no connection in that world.
No, man. All this fucking militarism, all this celebration of combat and conflict and war, and we used to call our soldiers servicemen. Now we call them war fighters. Shut the fuck up. I don't celebrate annihilating human bodies.
Yeah.
I don't. It's not toughness. You got to be able to fight. You want to be a man, you have to be able to stand up for yourself, or a human being. You have to be able to stand up for yourself and fight and take a punch and give a punch. Yeah, because it's tough. And life involves that, and we are competitive. But once you satisfy that aspect, you don't need to keep pushing that too much.
Yeah.
Feel confident.
And it doesn't even have to be physical fighting.
No.
Like you said, standing up for yourself, just being able to assert yourself, know what you want, know what you value, know what you believe, stand up for it.
Yeah.
There is power in that.
So is this then, to continue that point, is this just self-loathing projected outwards? I feel crappy about me and my future and my life and myself, and I hate myself. Fuck you. That's all this is?
Because think about it. Where does that come from, right? If we're psychoanalyzing this, these people don't just hate women or women identifying people for no reason. There's an experience on the other side of that where with rejection or bullying or something, and then they have used this as a way, their insecurity, to project to make that person now, like I said, it's flipping the script. You've moved from the victim and the persecutor, and you've made yourself the persecutor, and now you have them as the victim. It's retaliation, right?
It is retaliation on some level, yeah, but it's it is a retaliation based on misperception
and based on what you perceive as taking power back. But it's grouping every one that you see as that identity into the same bucket as the one or the group of people who fit that before.
Sure.
And again, that's taking away the individuality of people.
Yeah, it's gender or sex-based tribalism, and I gotta tell you, that's just fucking stupid.
Because not all women function the same way. Hell, we just were even saying here, in my relationship, we don't function as a trad couple, and there are women still in this day and age who are trad wives, wives. That's a concept, and that's the difference between me and them, and there is nothing wrong with either one of us because we are choosing it for ourselves. The point is, feminism is about being able to choose these things for ourselves, for all of us. It's not just about women. People lose that concept, feminism, because it has the femme in it. They think that means just women's rights. It's equal rights for humans. But and then men being able to make those choices for themselves too. If you're the kind of guy who you want a traditional marriage, that's okay too.
Sure.
But you don't have to be predatory. You don't have to be hateful. You don't have to be against the women who are, you don't have to date those women. You're not going to want to marry those women. That's all right. We're allowed to have our preferences, but you don't have to turn against them.
Well, they see that they want women, You know, it's a powerful biological urge, but I want them, but I can't admit to being this way, or I can't, I don't know how to approach. Maybe some of this is just a loss of ability to communicate, and maybe it's just increased complexity, and it's gotten messier.
Yeah, sociability.
Well, yeah, we took a big hit from COVID, and we're taking an ongoing hit from social media because this is not true relating. You and I know each other. We have practiced at communication, so we can make this work, and we do. But like, it's not enough. You know, you have to have real world human interactions.
Yeah.
And you can play video games online. You can have social experiences online.
Yeah,
But
have your connections.
But don't, if you overdo it, then you've overdone it. And if it becomes addictive or despairing or enraging, and there's all this emotional content with it, then you need to analyze that. If you're spending a lot of money, you need to analyze that. If you're pissed off because of this shit, you need to analyze that because you're being pulled away from your center, and it's not healthy. And here's the real fact too: is like, people want to fucking have human relationships, and it's outside or it's inside, but it's not on this screen, you know. And you can be honest about that and real about that and deal with this shit and go out and date, you know. And I had my niece had brought up that she felt that like a cohort, maybe her cohort, I'm not exactly sure, they're not learning the social skills necessary to mate, to partner up, whatever whoever you are, whatever your individuality is, whatever your identification is, and that shit is real because it's difficult. It's a skill set that needs to be learned, and it involves a lot of fucking vulnerability. And rejection.
Yes. And I think, like, we've talked about this before in episodes. I understand that there are circumstances where your environment isn't conducive to in real life connections, and that's unfortunate. That does happen. I understand that online communities at least give people connection, and it's something, and that's important. But if you can find those in-person connections, that's important. But like, anecdotally, to something that you're saying too, I was at Best Buy this weekend, and there was this guy. He was the customer service rep. So like, the guy who's interacting with people, like, that's his job. And he was in his 20s, early 20s, I'd say. He was Gen Z. And there there was a very clear lack of sociability and socialization, because not that he wasn't socializing and engaging with me, and not that he was rude in any way. He was perfectly pleasant, but there was no eye contact at all through any of the interaction. Not even like a looking at me kind of contact. And I was there with my husband, and there was this, we both like after this exchange, because the guy, when, I was trading in one electronic for another electronic, and the guy, we were at one register, and the guy said, "Follow me this way, my man." And clearly I was the one having the interaction with him. Like, my husband hadn't spoken at all. And I was like, me and my husband like just looked at each other, because it was that at that point we hadn't had much interaction. So I was like, is this a guy who's one of those dudes who like only talks to the guy, even though like the woman is here and I'm the one who's like clearly doing the exchange, but like talks to the man? That, or is it like, this is someone who is so minimally socialized that like those standard ways of talking that you don't know how to put on? And I don't need someone to talk to me like a total professional at a Best Buy. I don't care about that. But like, right, like that language, those the like terminology that every generation has, like using that in a professional exchange is like a little bit weird. But we're like, okay. Then as we're talking, he calls me bro at another point. I use bro all the time. I'm not offended by it by any means. I wasn't even offended by my man. I was just like, what is happening? And because he wasn't making eye contact, we never really sussed out if it was A or B. Like, if he was talking to Anthony over me, or if it was just like generational communication stuff. At one point, he told me I was cooked. And I was like, okay. But like there was this like really, really clear lack of ability to communicate with a person on the other end who's older than you and has a different linguistic style. You know, the terminology is different. And I can understand some of this. Cook got me a little confused. I think it meant like I was in trouble or something because I said I didn't have my license. But I was like, I'm not driving. So, but anyway, but it was just very clear that there is this lack of, because on social media, we're talking however we talk. And we do need to be able to not mask, but to meet the person on the other end of whatever kind of interaction we're having, to have communication that makes sense where we're understanding each other. This is creating a barrier, right? I'm only a generation above this person, so I understood for the most part. Context clues, Coke, I even kind of got. I didn't fully understand, but I was like, okay, whatever. But like, you know, if he would have said that to my 72-year-old dad, my dad would have been like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, right? Like it would have been a total disconnect. So there's that aspect. And something that I want to bring to this conversation too is the fact that like I realize I'm rushing to bring this in, but I feel like this is important and I know we're running out of time. But like there's pros and cons to social media being the way that it is too. Like there's the aspect of, like I said, there is connection that comes out of that, and there's wider connection. You can find people who really relate to your passions and your interests, which is great. There's a disconnect that can come with that if we're not also trying to put the same level of effort into our real life interactions. But the other element of this, and going back to the manosphere, is social media gives us access to things that some of us just don't really have access to. We don't have the funds or the resources to have access to certain things. Therapy, there's so many therapists, clinicians out there putting information that's helpful for people to have some general understanding. There's like financial gurus who are putting out tips for people to learn stuff like that. There's great information out there, but social media is unregulated. There is no measure of if people are getting fact checked, if people are putting out quality content and what goes out. So then it gets dangerous when people like Andrew Tate and the manosphere people are dropping information as fact and conditioning these young minds and these older minds too, as though this is just true and this is the way. And then people don't always know how to discern the difference between good quality content that's actually informative and giving them knowledge, and content that is kind of rotting their brain.
I agree. I'm following along on the spectrum. I think the technology itself, the systems itself, they're not good. They're designed to capture your attention, and in that design, you get bad outcomes because it's making you more of a recipient, more of a passive player in your own life, and you should have hard controls on this shit, and you should be outside. I know it's pretty like Gen X latchkey kid of me, but I believe in it too. And but that doesn't mean like, you know, like crashing your bike off a hill, breaking bones and stuff is living. Because that's a thing. It's a trope that's online now too. Free range kids or whatever. But go out and live, get off this thing, and basically, this is the way I put it for me: is what you take in is what you're going to get out. What you consume is what you're going to get out of your life, and what you're going to think, and what you're going to feel. And this rage bait shit is lame. It is lame, and it's not very fucking sophisticated, and it's not very intelligent, and it's dangerous, and it's just not going to lead you to a fulfilling life where you feel like that fulfilling in your chest, because I think that's what we want, and I think that's what we feel threatened on, and we're just clawing at each other.
Yeah. Be discerning about what you're hearing online, and question what you're hearing online. Don't just take things as fact because someone's on social media sharing it. Remember, it is not regulated. Nobody is checking to make sure that everything someone is posting is true or is useful. So like you have to do that for yourself. We have to check for ourselves.
Yeah, and you can do that as a young person, as a young kid. Like you guys have good bullshit detectors. And that's the famous thing that adults say. It's like kids know. They can feel it. And Andrew Tate is not a smart man. He's not an educated, capable, thoughtful individual. And he does not have anything to sell you that is useful.
Yeah, and you know the younger generations have better use of the internet. You guys know how to scope out if something is true or not. Like, use your skills, use these things to your benefit, but just question things. Don't just take things at face value. That's what, if I can leave you with one thing. Know that it's dangerous out there. Know that there are really huge benefits. There are great things to get out of that, but question and be discerning about what's what.
Yeah, there's a great big world out there, and this is an existentially threatening time. So fucking be part of the solution instead of part of the fucking problem. That's lame. That's what I think.
Yeah. Cool. I think it's a great landing spot.
We're landing it here.
Land it.
Thank you all for being here. It is a bad time and a good time. It's the worst of times. It's the best of times. The book by Charles Dickens, Tale of Two Cities. But go out there and be part of the solution instead of part of the problem. Thank you all for being here on the Death and All the Rest podcast. Thank you. Have a good day. Bye.